Hello, and welcome to a brand new series or season of Doomed, an Arkham Horror the Living card game playthrough with a focus on roleplay and storytelling. My name is Scott Humphrey, and I'm very excited that you're all able to join me for a brand new season of Doomed. I obviously did not get enough the first time around. For those of you who know the game backwards and forwards, check down below for the timestamp where we get into the action. For those of you who don't, stick around and I'll do a little intro like I do at the beginning of each new campaign, explaining what's going on and what to expect. This YouTube series is a playthrough of Arkham Horror the Living card game campaigns with a solo investigator and with a focus on role-playing and storytelling. That doesn't mean I'm going to deliberately be taking poor choices. Not deliberately, anyway. But we will be working together based on what happens in the scenarios to build the best, most interesting story together. Arkham Horror the Living card game is a living card game produced by Fantasy Flight Games. It is set in H.P. Lovecraft's Mythos universe, so typically in the sort of 1920s America. It is a cooperative card game in which a group of investigators takes on shadowy forces of darkness, be that a cult, be that monsters, be that some sort of abomination, or perhaps even the old ones themselves. There's a whole bunch of features of this game that really set it apart from other living card games, which makes it ideal for this kind of storytelling structure. Again, for those of you who are relatively new to the Arkham Horror LCG, I won't be talking through every single one of my mechanical decisions. I may stop during the playthrough to explain a little bit about a ruling or to check a ruling or whatever I need to do, but a brief overview of the game. We, the investigator, are trying to advance the Act deck. The Act deck usually requires clues or some other objective in order to accomplish our goals. Meanwhile, the Mythos, the enemy, whoever, is trying to advance the agenda deck. That is done by placing Doom and reaching a certain Doom threshold. Doom is placed naturally or unnaturally every round, and also by certain card effects. So essentially, we're in a race against the clock to accomplish our goals before the Mythos achieve theirs. Every round, we have 3 actions, typically, which we will take. There's an enemy phase where the monsters on the board do their thing. We have an upkeep, like in most card games. And then we enter the Mythos phase, where Doom is placed. We advance the agenda if necessary, if it's reached its threshold, and we draw from the encounter deck. This is the bad stuff deck. This is what prevents the game from being a very simple calculation of, well, I have the right cards, so I'm just going to win. Always throwing a wrench in their plans, those horrible monsters. In our first Doomed series, Agnes Baker took on the Return to the Night of the Zealot. And despite a really poor showing in Return to the Midnight Masks in the middle scenario, she was able to call upon the power of her small up-and-coming Witches' Coven to defeat a horrible beast by sacrificing someone to it. So she won, but at what cost? I'm hoping that our new investigator will take a different tack, one that will maybe be a bit more effective, perhaps a bit more brutal. Let's have a look at our new investigator, and let's get doomed. Our new investigator, who will be taking on Return to the Dunwich Legacy all alone, is Zoey Samaras, the chef. You can see her statistics here. She has 4 willpower and 4 combat, and 2 intellect and agility. She is a believer and a hunter, and I think that's going to give us a good insight into how we want to play her. After she becomes engaged with an enemy, she gains a resource. Okay, so she likes being toe-to-toe. Her Elder Sign effect is +1. If it's successful during an attack, it deals +1 damage, so again, it's pretty clear that her intention is to fight. God has spoken. I will do his work without hesitation. She has 9 health and 6 sanity. Let's read her background to get a sense of where she's coming from, shall we? Zoey had known that she was special ever since God spoke to her one night when she was 6 years old. the night that terrible fire took away her parents. He told her that he had chosen her from among all the people of the world to be his agent. She would protect the innocent and punish the wicked. Since then, he comes to her in times of trouble, offering guidance and comfort. Zoey now travels from city to city, taking work as a chef to support herself. When she isn't working, she stalks the night, guided by the Lord's voice. Wherever she finds wickedness, she strikes it down without remorse or hesitation. So I think we have some pretty clear insight into Zoey's state of mind. We'll have a look at what's going on in this new adventure upon which she is embarking. But suffice it to say that Zoey is a true believer. She truly believes that in the trauma she experienced as a child, she was spoken to by her God, who then instructs her on how to smite the wicked, how to destroy those creatures of darkness. Now, it's been raised before, and I think it bears mentioning. She believes that that what she hears is the voice of her God. Who's to say it isn't indeed a God, but a different one? Who's to say? We may gain insight as we play through these scenarios and through this campaign as to who she's really hearing from. Dr. Henry Armitage pours himself a glass of Pinot and sits down at his desk, gesturing for you to sit across from him. Right away. This is a match made in some sort of weird version of heaven. Dr. Henry Armitage, clearly a doctor, probably a professor, drinking Pinot Noir, I can only assume. And then there's like butcher's smock Joey. Then there's butcher's smock Zoey sitting on the couch opposite, just like horrible gleam in her eye, possibly sharpening a knife, just watching him. I apologize for the short notice, he begins. His face is pale, his forehead sweaty, and wrinkled with worry. Armitage, the head librarian of Miskatonic University and a former mentor of yours, we'll come back to that, privately contacted you in the hopes of gaining your assistance. Eager to help, you made your way to his home in Southside. Upon entering, you were surprised to find his home in disarray. Books and notes litter his desk, and an empty bottle of wine has tipped over onto the ground by the fireplace. Oh, Henry. You'd always known Armitage to be neat and well organized. The elderly man takes a moment to collect his thoughts. I am looking for two of my colleagues, Dr. Francis Morgan, Professor of Archaeology, and Warren Rice, Professor of Languages. Warren was supposed to meet up with me over supper earlier today to discuss several important findings, but he's since gone missing. At first I thought nothing of it, but I have a nagging feeling something else is going on, a very familiar feeling. You've never seen Armitage quite this worried before. His hands tremble as he reaches for the glass on his desk, and he sips from it nervously. I tried to find Francis, hoping he knew where Warren was, but he too is out of touch. Francis has been spending a lot of time in some gambling den, or so I'm told. I sent for you because I am worried Warren might be in trouble. I would appreciate it greatly if you could find him for me. You may also wish to ask Francis for help, if you can reach him. The investigators must decide, choose one. Professor Warren Rice was last seen working late at night in the Humanities Department of Miskatonic University. Let's search for him there. Or Dr. Francis Morgan was last seen gambling at the Clover Club, an upscale speakeasy and gambling joint located downtown. Let's go talk to him. So we get to decide which scenario to play first. I want to make a couple of points here. Dr. Henry Armitage, the head librarian of Miskatonic University, is a former mentor of Zoey's, which leads me to believe that when Zoey arrived in Arkham, again, probably on the instruction of the voice in her mind, she immediately knew it was a foul place. We know there's ghouls living beneath the city, but there may also be other forces at work. And I guarantee you that Zoey knew that this is the place she was going to have to base her work from. Now, I think it's actually a good point to make that Zoey doesn't just run around at night stabbing creatures of darkness. It would appear that she also made good friends with, and even became an apprentice to, almost, the head librarian at Miskatonic University. This is someone who reads. This is someone who researches. This is someone who likes to know what she's getting herself into, but she'll stop at nothing once she's there. In terms of who we're going to go after, Dr. Henry Armitage is looking for Warren Rice, professor of languages. He thought Francis Morgan might know where Warren was. Not that Zoey doesn't want to help, but Dr. Francis Morgan is currently at the Clover Club, or was last seen there, an upscale speakeasy and gambling joint. Zoey doesn't strike me like the kind of person who's going to be wanting to spend all that time amongst all of those sinners in the speakeasy. So, naturally, she is going to work for her old mentor and go and see if she can find Professor Warren Rice. Scenario 1A, extracurricular activity. Dr. Armitage is worried his colleague, Professor Warren Rice, might be in trouble, so he's asked you for your help in finding his friend. He seems unreasonably nervous about his colleague's disappearance, considering Professor Rice has only been missing for a matter of hours. What are you not telling me? This is more or less what our board looks like. This is Zoey here, looking amazing with her butcher's knife that she could use for chopping, but clearly she's using it for stabbing. And that's awesome. We've got our setup here, which we'll look at in a moment. We'll read our agenda and our act, and then we'll look at drawing some cards. Agenda 1A, Quiet Halls. You've arrived at the Miskatonic University campus in search of Professor Warren Rice. Classes are over, and a mysterious silence hangs in the air over the quad. Act 1A, After Hours. Professor Rice was last seen several hours ago by one of Armitage's students in the Humanities building. 3 clues. We need 3 clues, and clearly we're headed for the Humanities building, wherever that is. In terms of how the game is played, again, I'm assuming a basic knowledge of the game, of Arkham Horror, the living card game, but just to quickly recap, when we take, most of the time, in order to achieve things, you take skill tests. You compare your skill value, listed at the top of your card, with any bonuses or benefits you might have, compared to the difficulty of the task, and then you draw a chaos token from the bag. Just draw one. There you go. +1. Hey, that's a great auspicious start, and I'm sure I just wasted all of my luck. The chaos token gives you a modifier, and some of them are special modifier tokens, skulls, cultists, and elder things, although there's none of those in the bag, thankfully. After which you recalculate your score. If you are evens or better, you succeed at your task. Congratulations. Let's draw our opening hand, and let's get ready to be doomed. It's a very generous mulligan process in Arkham Horror, and I think I'm going to pretty much use it straight up here. Prepared for the worst allows me to hunt for a weapon, but I would actually just rather get a weapon, so I'm actually going to toss back everything. Almost everything. Great, that's a weapon. And a little bit, okay, and some clue tech, good. Okay, so we're doing great. A too early winter has stripped the trees bare. Their dead branches whistle as a sharp, cold wind cuts across the empty quad. This is the Miskatonic Quad. We can resign from here, so we can run. We can't find Rice anywhere. You leave the campus, probably at a quick run. Surrounded by fences and gates of wrought iron, you can't help but feel as much a prisoner here as a guest. Ew. This is where we begin. We are looking for clues, specifically, and apparently he was last seen in the Humanities building. The Humanities building is over here. Professor Rice was last seen in the Humanities building, teaching one of his Latin classes. The murky windows of the weather-worn structure emit no light, and the night is silent around you. Other locations here include the Science building, the Administration building, the Student Union, and the Warren Observatory. This is I believe, the new location from Return to Extracurricular Activities. Zoey, as we've established, is a relatively direct kind of person. She's looking for Warren Rice. She's going to go to where Warren Rice was. And if she happens to encounter somebody along the way that she needs to deal with, well, she's going to deal with them. So the very first thing she's going to do upon arriving at the quad is make sure that she has a weapon. Now, Zoey isn't necessarily, crazed all the time. Sometimes she's crazed. But she wants to make sure that she's safe. Something in the tone of Henry Armitage's voice tells her that things are maybe not quite what they seem here at the university. It's hard to know what to expect. It's not that late at night, so there are clearly still students here, and she's not expecting to have to fight anybody, but if anything comes up, she wants to be ready. So her first action is to make sure that she has her machete. Her second will be to head to the Humanities building. It's a 3-shroud location with 2 clues. It says, at the end of your turn, if you're in the Humanities building, discard the top X cards of your deck. X is the amount of horror. Discarding the top cards of your deck is interesting. That kind of burns cards from you, which I'm not sure what that's going to do to us, but we'll find out. The power is out. Oh, the power is out, plunging the building's halls into heavy darkness. There is no sign of Professor Rice. Darn it, he's not here. However, that was our second action, was to move there. And rather than leave, Zoey knows she needs to look. She needs to see what she can do to find Professor Rice. She's got her weapon. She doesn't have a flashlight or anything. It's dark. But Zoey is drawn to the flame. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. This is an event where you draw the top card of the encounter deck and then discover 2 clues. It's testless clues, but you have to deal with whatever the encounter deck throws at you, so it's a trade-off. Zoey feels this wave of darkness coming off the Humanities building. The lights are out, there's clearly nobody there, and yet she has to know. She pushes in towards the building to see what she can discover. A pact. Ew. By moving into the Humanities building, she has unknowingly stepped within a dark pact. Perhaps some sort of seal was placed on the door, unbeknownst to her. Peril. Peril is a keyword which means I can't show the other people at the table. Now, naturally, you, dear viewer, are inside my mind, so, feel free. You may draw a card. You may choose and discard up to 2 cards from your hand. Test will X. If you fail, take 2 horror. X is the number of cards in your hand when the test begins. Do I want to discard anything from my hand? I mean, I don't really mind discarding, something. I can also draw a card, which is nice. But I won't. I think what I'm going to do here, I'm going to toss. So I'm testing my willpower versus 2, the number of cards in my hand. Again, by stepping into the Humanities building, Zoey's unwittingly sort of stepped into or through this seal of some kind, some sort of pact. She's trying to resist it. She's not trying to give in. We're testing 4 versus 2. -1. Fantastic. Didn't fail. Don't take any horror. Nothing happens. And we get the 2 clues from this location. At the end of our turn, if you're in the Humanities building, discard the top X cards of your deck. X is the amount of horror. None. So, again, Zoey can feel that there's a danger to this place, but because nothing's happened yet, it's just kind of unnerving her. She's going to try to get out of here as soon as possible. There's no enemies, so I don't need to do the enemy phase. In the Upkeep phase, we draw a dodge and take a resource. And now we move to the Mythos phase, the first of the game. We've already drawn an encounter card outside of the first Mythos, which is apparently I want to do myself. You can do it, Zoey. I believe in you. You've already discovered some clues. There was nothing at the Humanities building, per se, other than perhaps a seal, perhaps some sort of pact that she's triggered. But by having done so, she knows the forces that she's dealing with are more sinister than she expected. There is a conspiracy here at the university, perhaps even slightly larger than just the university. She's using the information that she's gathered from the Humanities building to plan her next move. However, we need to draw an encounter card. Beyond the Veil. This is, just as a quick aside, when I first started playing the game, my second campaign was the Dunwich Legacy, the original, and I can remember the horror as I drew this card, not understanding, like, it's just such a great design space. Let's read it. Surge, I forgot about that. It has Surge, which means that I'm going to draw another one after this. Put it into play in your threat area, if there's no other copy. It doesn't do anything otherwise. Forced. If your deck has no cards in it, take 10 damage and discard Beyond the Veil. Very few investigators can survive 10 damage. Currently, Zoey has 9 health, so if she had some sort of soak, she could survive. But it's unlikely. This is going to slow me down and make me not want to discard cards. Too bad I did discard one last turn. It also says Surge. So having, again, this Eldritch Pact, by deciding not to take it, Zoey can feel her mind being invaded by a jumble of thoughts and voices and sensations and futures, perhaps? The veil of reality is being lifted, and Zoey doesn't like it. She knows there are things on the other side of that veil that she needs to stab and chop. She knows that it is her mission to smite the wicked, but she doesn't quite know what's beyond that veil, and as it's being lifted slowly, she realizes she doesn't like it. Secret door. Attached to the location with the most investigators and without a secret door. Okay, we've got a secret door here. Investigators can't leave. Test willpower 3 to search for the passage, or or intellect 3 to discern the way out. If you succeed, discard it. Having entered the Humanities building with nothing more than a hope and a prayer and a machete, not only did Zoey trigger some sort of pact, but by resisting it, she's also started to pull back the veil of our own reality and sort of see what lies beyond. Turning to leave Professor Warren Rice's last known location in the Humanities building, the door has disappeared. The power is out, so it's almost impossible for her to know where she needs to go. How is she going to get out? Well, that was a pretty wild Mythos phase, I gotta tell you guys. It's now the investigation phase. First things first, we need to get out of here. We don't need to be here any longer. And clearly, based on the pact, based on the lights being out, and based on this secret door being sealed behind her, somebody or something is trying to prevent Zoey from continuing her work, her mission. So Zoey's going to take the initiative. Thematically, take the initiative represents you, the guardian, stepping in front of your friends and being like, let me handle this. But in this situation, seeing as Zoey doesn't have any friends, seeing as Zoey is trapped, she could sit back and think. She could take her time and really consider, okay, if there's a secret door here in this office, there must also be some sort of way out. No consideration. She's taking the initiative, and she's immediately looking around the room for a way to... she's immediately touching everything to see if she can try to move the secret door, open the secret door once more. Take the initiative provides me with 3 wild icons, so I'm testing 7 willpower. Oh, sorry, I should actually read take the initiative. It says, it loses a wild icon for each action that's been completed by any investigator this phase. None have been completed yet, so it's got 3 wild icons. I'm testing will 3. I have will 7. 7v3. Occultist. Well. Occultist. It's -1. -3 if there's lots of cards in my discard pile, so success. Zoey immediately springs into action, moves back to the wall where she knew the door was at some point, although it seems to have been camouflaged, and starts feeling around. By using the tip of the machete that she brought along with her, her chopping blade, she's able to find the crack in the wall where the edge of the door is, and just manages to jimmy it open, and it pops open with a satisfying click. Second action, let's get the heck out of here. We're gonna go to the Warren Observatory because it's connected, and we haven't been there yet. The latest addition to the Miskatonic University campus is the Gerald Warren Astronomical Observatory, which sits high atop Crane Hill and overlooks all of Arkham. Built in the latest Art Nouveau style, the observatory stands out distinctly from the rest of the buildings of the university. Given the sort of clues that she's found so far, given what she knows about the fact that somebody trapped the door behind her, somebody set this seal that would kind of go off when somebody would enter the humanities building, Zoey's suspicion is that there are perhaps students in on it, so she's going to check out the student union. But something about the observatory calls to her as well. It seems unconnected, but perhaps there's information or somebody there that can help her. 4 shroud and 1 clue. After you discover 1 or more clues, discard 3 cards from the top of your deck for each clue discovered. Victory 1, so it gives an experience point if there are no clues on it at the end of the game. As you traverse the observatory's new halls, you wonder whether its state-of-the-art astronomical equipment will offer answers about the universe, or will only raise more questions. Big thoughts. Unfortunately, Zoey is not in a position to investigate here, so as much as I'd like to, and perhaps we'll have time, but we're going to just move on. Third action, she's going to go back to the quad. Again, in the enemy phase, there are no enemies. So we're going to take our upkeep and draw our Desperate Search. This is kind of the core of the deck. If we can find ways of taking horror, which I'm sure we have somewhere, we'll be able to use our Desperate Search. Zoey isn't known as an investigator around Arkham per se, but she definitely can hold her own if somebody comes for her, and she has been known to tear a room apart looking for answers. We move back to the Mythos phase. You know, the night's still young. We're doing okay. We're at 2 out of 7. It actually feels... Nope, don't say it. Don't say it or you're doomed. Draw an encounter card. A baleful welcome. Well, we have had a baleful welcome, but moving back to the quad, Zoey is suddenly struck by a force that she hadn't anticipated. It's coming from the other side of the campus, but not sure where exactly. Peril, again, I can't discuss it with anybody except you, dear viewer. Choose 2 of the following actions. For the remainder of the round, each investigator can't perform them. If this isn't the first copy of this drawn, choose 3. Investigate, fight, evade, move, or play. We're going to want to move. We're maybe going to want to fight. We're maybe going to want to investigate. We're probably going to want to play. We're definitely, I don't care about evading. So I'm going to choose, it's for the rest of this round. I'm going to choose evade and fight. There's no enemies in play. Yeah. So again, this energy kind of emanating from the other side of the campus, and suddenly Zoey feels completely unable to, well, lift her arms even. She feels totally unable to fight back if she had to. And I'll keep this here as a reminder. But we're back to the investigation phase. We can still do most of the things we need to do, so that's good. From here, we can head to the science building, the administration building, or the student union. Again, I think Zoey's current thought is that it's the students. It may be a truly sinister cult, or it may just be a prank, but she's going to go see if she can scare some sense into him. First action, we're going to move to the student union. Even at this late hour, you can hear a muffled chatter from inside the student union. Perhaps one of the students will know where Professor Rice is. Good question. 1 shroud and 2 clues. Yes. After student union is revealed, put the set-aside dormitories into play. Heal a damage and a horror. So we can spend 2 actions to heal ourselves, but we don't really need to do that right now. The red brick form of the west dormitory could be seen through the trees. The door leading into the dormitories is locked. You can't move in there. It's locked. We don't have a key. Maybe she'll be able to bust it down at some point, but for now, it's locked. However, there are 2 clues here in the student union, and I imagine Zoe's going to want to try to find them. So, again, there's no way for her to really improve her investigating. As she arrives here in the student union, there's plenty of chatter, lots of students round about. Some of them are, probably in bed in their dormitories, and some of them are probably studying elsewhere, the library, etc. But there's quite a few people, so Zoe tucks her chopping blade away and goes to town. She's asking them about Professor Warren Rice. Let's see if she's successful. She has 2 intellect versus the 1 shroud of this location. Nope. A lot of them are put off by the blood on her apron as a third passes by and kind of gives her a strange glance. She yells after it, "Oh, it's pig's blood. It's not human blood, it's pig's blood." Like, that's going to help Zoe. And last action, before she continues on, she realizes she might need some of that backup. She thought she might need to do this, but she's made a lot of friends here in Arkham over the years. She's helped quite a few people solve problems that needed solving in any way necessary. And specifically, she's ingratiated herself to the police force for putting an end to several murders that were taking place. Again, they didn't ask, she didn't tell, but we all know exactly what it was that she did to make sure that the murderers went away. However, she's able to, in her quest to try to get more information out of the students, she's able to call upon a cop who's happening to be walking by. George is a police officer in this end of town, and again, Zoe's had a few run-ins with him, but they're on pretty good terms. She's going to ask him to come along and just see if perhaps he can command a bit more respect from the students. This beat cop gives us a bit of combat, gives us some soak, and we can essentially toss him at an enemy. he can run in and sacrifice himself for us if we need. It's the end of the investigation phase because she's called upon this beat cop. In the upkeep phase, drawing a meat cleaver. Zoe's, of course brought a backup weapon, but she hasn't needed any so far, so I think it's going okay. We'll reset our actions here. A baleful welcome only lasts until the end of the round, so we're moving back into the Mythos phase. We're here in the student dormitories attempting to get clues, talking to people, trying to command a bit of respect, as we move to 3 out of 7 Doom. Draw an encounter card. It's another Eldritch Accord. Okay, something is going on here. Zoe immediately gets the sense that something is happening here as well in the student dormitories. It's that same sense that she's getting that something is offering her power. Well, she gets a sense, but then following that sense into a nearby study room, she actually finds an old tome on a desk. It seems to be calling out to her. As she starts to reach out towards it, she realizes she probably shouldn't. You may draw a card, choose and discard up to 2 cards in your hand, test Will X. They want us to get rid of our resources, because if we do, then we become more vulnerable to whatever cult is here at the university. Zoe is not going to take the bait. She's strong of will. She has 4 willpower, and she's going to just take this on the chin. She's 4 against 3. The tome is calling to her, and it almost sounds like the voice of the god that she listens to almost every night. But she realizes, of course, that voice would never speak to her through a book. It would never be here, and it would never whisper promises of power to her. And so she's able to resist. Just. We move back into the investigation phase. So again, Zoe's hoping that with George here along by her side, she'll be able to command a bit more respect. The first action, of course, is going to be to see if we can draw something good. Nope, not at all. Okay, that's fine. Her first action is going to see if she can find anything more to use. Unfortunately not. Her second action, she's going to send George off in the other direction while she attempts to interview another student. So she's 2 intellect against 1 shroud. Okay, that's a skull. That might be good. It's a -1, and if you fail. We didn't fail. We did it. Zoe manages to speak to one of the students. And he kind of looks furtively at her. Professor Rice, I thought he was in the humanities building. And last action, she's going to press him a little further. Just going to check here. The objective is just 3 clues. So I think we're going to try to get a last clue, and then we'll advance if we need to, and we'll see where we need to go from there. Last action, she's going to just try to press her luck a little bit with this guy, with this little science student. 0! She did it! You did it! It's not that Zoe's not the brightest, it's just that she doesn't speak the language of academics, or students for that matter. She speaks the language of fanatics. She and Lita Chantler would probably get along pretty well. She manages to get a bit more information out of the student before he runs off, and George comes back armed with more information as well. That's the end of our turn. We can advance at any time, just in terms of the thought process here. I'm going to take an upkeep and a mythos just to see if we have anything more to deal with before we advance. But Zoe's feeling pretty good that between she and George, she'll be able to find the answers that she's looking for. Again, no enemies. This is good, although clearly there's something at play here. Upkeep. Another meat cleaver. Interesting. And our Mythos phase. We go to 4 out of 7 Doom. It's getting there, but we're doing pretty well too. Draw our encounter card. Visions of future past. Visions of futures past, sorry. Are these visions of things to be, or things as they might be? Or could these horrors have already happened? For each point you fail by, discard the top card of your deck. Speaking with George, suddenly both of them are racked by this veil that had been pulled up in the humanities building. Zoe has felt strong mentally. She's been able to resist everything that's been thrown at her so far, and in fact so much so that she sort of felt, well, maybe there's nothing really going on here, maybe it's all in my mind. And then suddenly they're both struck by these incredibly powerful visions. Gnashing teeth, waving tentacles, some sort of blood rite, steam and smoke. What could it mean? We're going to drop a meat cleaver, which, again, this is Zoe attempting to truly buckle down and resist these visions with something that she knows. She's holding on to the meat cleaver that she's carried in her pocket, and she's kind of running her thumb along the blade. We're going to attempt to resist. We're a 5 willpower against 5. -3, okay. So the visions kind of rack her for some time. And George, and she's going to lose scene of the crime, prepared for the worst, and a flashlight. These visions have presented her with, again, not really knowledge of what's to come, because it's impossible to say whether these visions are things that are happening, will happen, or have already happened. The sense of time has been totally skewed, and in that time, Zoe's almost completely lost her ability to reason. How is she going to be able to learn anything about Warren Rice when this kind of force is what is arrayed against her? We'll move back into the investigation phase, and we'll spend the 3 clues to see what specifically Zoe has discovered with George. Whoops. I didn't take my other clues, but we're down to 1. We're going to advance the act. Act 1B, the janitor. You were unable to find Professor Rice, but one of the students you spoke with, the little guy, he mentioned a strange man entering Rice's office. Unfortunately, the door leading to the faculty offices is locked at this late hour. The student says that the head janitor, Jazz, might be able to let you in, if you can find him. Shuffle the encounter discard pile and the set-aside Jazz Mulligan into the encounter deck. So Jazz is an ally, but, well, not an ally, he's an asset, but we need to find him first, right? Shuffle him into the, So he's in there somewhere, in this 34-card encounter deck. Act 2A, Rice's whereabouts. So by questioning the student, Zoe's learned pretty clearly that not only did somebody enter Rice's office who maybe wasn't supposed to be there, but also he's kind of mentioned that you just can't just walk into somebody's faculty office, especially if they're not there, it's going to be locked. Perhaps the janitor can help, Jazz Mulligan. Concerned for Professor Rice's safety, you seek out the head janitor, who can let you into the locked sections of the campus. So, for an action and a clue, we can spend a clue to discard the top 5 cards of the encounter deck. Top 10, if there's one player in the game. There is. I mean, you're all players too, viewers, so. Forced, if you discard Jazz Mulligan for any reason, resolve his revelation effect when you take control of him in advance. So, we need clues to be able to discard cards from the encounter deck to be able to find Jazz. Now, thankfully, Zoe's already done so. She's already kind of found a bit more information out from the student, so she'll be able to hopefully at least eliminate some locations. So her first action will be to spend that clue that she already got and discard 10. Here at the Student Union, she's on the hunt for Professor Jazz Mulligan top card. Top card! I have to discard the other 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That is absolutely incredible. What are the odds of that? 1 in 34, I guess. What's that? Just under 3%? Revelation. Put him into play at your location. Boop. He was here the whole time. Oh, maybe you can ask Jazz, the janitor. Okay, do you know where he is? There he is. Oh, thanks, kid. He's the head janitor, sorry. While he's not controlled by an investigator, he gains Action Parlay, Test Book 3. If successful, take control of him. While you control him, you can ignore the text on unrevealed locations. So he has the keys that will let us into the other locations. And, of course, when you take control of him in advance. So our first action was to spend that clue to try to find him. I honestly can't believe that happened. That's, like, kind of wild. Our second action, we have to try to talk to him, but, like, I'll be honest, I don't really know. Zoe doesn't talk good. So I think actually second action we're gonna draw a card. Darn it. Well, okay, it's a book. You know what? Yeah, we're gonna should we try to build here? Yeah. Third action we're gonna just try it. It's really unlikely. God, it's so unlikely. Third action we're gonna draw again. Okay, take the initiative. I think we're in a good spot here. Okay, that was the investigation phase. Again, there's no enemies because I discarded a whole bunch of them when Jazz was on top of the encounter deck. Draw a scene of the crime. Even better. That's going to help later, I think. We have 7 cards in hand, which is nearing our max of 8 as we head back into the Mythos phase. So, despite the fact that Zoe's brought along this machete and she encountered George on walking his beat and, you know, he's helped her get some information out of the students, really, so far, more than anything, Zoe's actually just been convinced that there is a conspiracy arranged against her, but she's thinking more about it now. Perhaps it was just a trick. Perhaps that sign, that feeling she felt in the humanities building and again in the student union, maybe there was nothing to it after all. Perhaps the voice she heard was her god. Perhaps that secret door just did close behind her and was kind of just, you know, a trick of the light or maybe a gust of wind. It's really hard to say. As we move into the Mythos phase, we move to 5 of 7 Doom. This has been very effective. Again, I have to say. We draw an encounter card. Ahahaha! as Zoe learns about the location of Jazz Mulligan here in the student, I keep saying, want to say student dormitories, but it is the student union at Miskatonic University. She starts to head up to where his office is on the top floor. And on the way, she turns the corner. At the end of the hall, there's a man standing with his head bowed against the floor. Something is curled in his right hand. His left appears to be engorged with blood. And as he turns around, there's something in his eyes that tells us that something is horribly wrong. He's starting to change and shift and burst out from inside of his clothes. Something has happened to this man. And Zoe can see that whatever is happening to him has also taken over his mind. So, he's a humanoid abomination. He spawns engaged with us, which gives us a resource. Thanks. He's got Hunter and Retaliate, so he's going to follow us, and if we don't chop him, he's going to hit us back. After he attacks you, discard the top cards of your deck. After he's evaded, he's defeated. So if you can get away from him, he'll be overcome by this beastly power, and it will just kind of, it will destroy him. But that's not Zoe's style, is it? So that was our Mythos phase. This security guard that, again, something truly horrific has come upon him and is starting to twist his body and his skeleton into something totally unnatural. It starts to shamble and then lope and then charge down the hall at Zoe. She and George are ready. Now I can discard the beat cop to deal a damage to him, but I don't think I want to do that. I can still parlay, which means I can still try to get Jazz at this moment, which actually I think, weirdly enough, I'm actually going to do that first. It doesn't provoke an attack of opportunity to parlay while you're engaged with an enemy. So, in fact, Zoe, as this changed human is starting to run towards her, she's going to shout for Jazz and is hoping that the desperation in her voice will bring him. She's going to commit this take the initiative and this astounding revelations, which is 2 intellect, 3 from the revelation, 3 more from taking the initiative. She's a 6 versus the 3 that's required to take control of Jazz. Let's do that first, shall we? Fantastic. Jazz Mulligan comes running. We take control of him, which means we're going to advance before we do anything else. You convince Jazz that something strange is going on. Jazz, look at this beast that's in front of me. Who is this? Who is this security guard? What's happened to him? Professor Rice may be in danger. Maybe this guy already got to him. Look, he's got blood on his hands. He doesn't trust you enough to hand you his keys, but he agrees to come with you. Well, I mean, that makes sense too. Uh-oh. Oh, all of a sudden you hear a crash coming from the science building, and a student rushes towards you. You're still, grappling with this abomination of a security guard. Help, he cries. There's some kind of animal loose in the chem labs. I only barely caught a glimpse of it, but... He shudders. I think it's heading to the dorms. You gotta do something. If the alchemy lab's location is not in play, put it in play. The alchemy labs is next to the science building, and I know that. If you are at Agenda 1 or 2, we are, spawn the set-aside The Experiment in the Alchemy Labs. We're going to look at that in a bit. If you have completed House Always Wins, blah, blah, blah. If it's the first scenario, remove alchemical concoction. So you get a bit of a leg up. Because there's 2 scenarios at the beginning of this campaign, and you can play either one first, you get a drawback for the second scenario because it's later in the evening. You're less likely to succeed, but then it gives you a boon later in the scenario as well. So it's kind of a fun balance. I did this scenario first because that's what Zoe would do. Let's read Act 3A. You have only moments to react. You could warn the students in the dormitories and escort them to safety, or continue your task of searching the faculty offices for Professor Rice. Or perhaps you could try to slay the beast that threatens the campus. Objective: find and complete an objective on another encounter card. So we have to figure out what we're supposed to do, but it gave us some good ideas here. Taking a quick look here, the experiment, something went terribly wrong. It's an elite abomination. It looks truly horrifying, and this must be that evil force that Zoey has felt. It's massive, which means it takes up a whole location. It hits everyone at its location, but if you leave, it doesn't kind of stay stuck with you. It gets +3 health per investigator, so it's a 4-fight, 10 health to evade enemy. When the enemy phase begins, it readies, so it's always moving. And if it's defeated, advance to Act 3B, 2 victory points. And it's just going to chill there, though. So this, oh gosh, so much has happened. This abomination of a security guard has started to shamble and, well, apparently run, but still shambling, I guess, down the hall towards Zoey and George. She shouts for Jazz, who is suspicious of her, specifically because of so much weird stuff that's happening at the campus that night, but agrees to go with her. So his keys are at our disposal, and just before we say, well, let's go find Professor Warren Rice, a smash, a crash, and perhaps a small explosion are heard from the alchemy labs. A pungent stench rises from the laboratory downstairs. The silence of the hall is broken by the unmistakable hiss of a burner. And then the student kind of ran up and told us that there's something loose in the lab, and it's big, and it is perhaps not hungry, but it is out to destroy. Okay. It doesn't move yet. So Zoey has the choice of running into the alchemy labs with Jazz to unlock it because it's currently locked, and trying to chop up the experiment. That seems very Zoey to me, so I think that's a strong contender for winning here. We do have to deal with this security guard. The other options that Zoey thinks of immediately are, of course, trying to find Professor Warren Rice, or warning the students in the dormitories because we're quite close to there, leading them to safety. So that's a possibility as well. Without thinking too much about what happens later in the campaign, because of course Zoey doesn't know, she's here to find Warren Rice. But is he here? Hard to say. There's a beast on the loose. It's already smashed up the alchemy labs, and who knows where it's headed next. So she could try to lead some students to safety. She could try to just kill it, or she could, I guess, try to find Warren Rice. The thing we have to deal with, of course, is we have to deal with this enthralled security guard. So, in fact, second action, we're going to try to chop this guy up. We have 4 fight, 5 because George is assisting us, 6 because we have a machete. So let's chop, shall we? We're 6v2. Horrible. Just horrible. Oh, that's so bad. Oh, okay. So, I mean, it's bound to happen, right? This information overload causes Zoey to drop her guard, but only for a moment, and in that moment, the enthralled security guard swings at her and manages to catch her out. He does a damage, and he attacks us, so we're discarding the top 2 cards of our deck. A cash and a drawn to the flame. Darn it. Cash doesn't really help, so that's okay. We need to take a damage. Beyond the Veil is in play. I don't want to lose Jazz. I don't want to lose the beat cop, but I'll put it down. So George is going to take the hit for me. Sorry, George. We have to go again, and I wish I could do 3 damage to him. I mean, I could. I really could, hey? I could just, like, slash him and then, like, throw George at him. I'm still in a position to survive Beyond the Veil. Zoe's looking for an opening as George tussles with the guard, and she's going to slash him again. That's much better. -1. So, 2 damage. We're able to chop his arm off. Now he has 3 health, which means if we could do a single point of damage, we wouldn't have to worry about getting attacked again. Running low on cards in the old Deckaroo. So I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to... Now, does that mean that George is dead? No, I don't think so. As we manage to chop the security guard's arms off, he starts to come back to himself. Obviously, he's in a huge amount of shock, but clearly whatever was infecting him had started somehow in his arm, so he's starting to come back to himself, and George carries him away back to the precinct, hoping to get some answers. What happened to you, etc. So George isn't dead, he's just gone. Too bad, but it is what it is. In the enemy phase, we're just going to triple check, but the experiment doesn't move, it doesn't hunt, so we're okay. In Upkeep, draw the other cash and I take a resource. I have to say, between this campaign of Doomed and the first campaign of Doomed, I never drew my signature weakness, and I think I only drew my basic weakness maybe once. I don't even remember what it was. That's how rarely I drew it. Clearly, I'm very lucky when it comes to the order in which things are arranged. Zoey no longer has George as he carries the security guard off, kicking and screaming, and he advises Zoey not to go after the beast. He'll bring some backup and see what's going on at the alchemy labs, but it's too much for just one person. She has a choice to make now. 6 out of 7 Doom. Here it comes. Draw an encounter card. A whippoorwill. Ooh. It is vowed that the birds are psychopomps lying in wait for the souls of the dying. I don't know much about whippoorwills myself. In this sort of world, the birds nest in the trees and just kind of gaze at you from afar, and eventually whole hordes of them, flocks of them, I guess, are just able to sap your ability to do anything. So, mechanically speaking, it's at our location, and it's a hunter, so it follows us, but it's aloof, so it doesn't actually stand with us. It's just kind of apart. But everyone at its location gets -1 to each of its stats, which sucks. So we can just leave, but it'll follow us. We can try to chop it up, but we'll have to go and get it first, which, seems pretty fair. The whippoorwill is here. It's not engaged with us. It also does horror, which is maybe a good thing. This is an important moment in the story for Zoey, because she was just warned by George, don't bother taking on that beast. You might be able to do it, but it seems like and it is, I mean, she doesn't know this yet, but it is elite. It's huge. And 4 fight is not a joke either. It's not like she's going to be able to try to evade it and then, throw things at it. She wants to get up and smite the wicked. Zoey is driven, and she knows that her task, her job, and her destiny is to smite the wicked, but perhaps she knows better than to just rush into a place she's never been with some sort of beast that is, 10 times her size. Not 10 times her size, but it is very large. We can either search for Warren or try to lead the students out. Those are the other options. If we rush over and see about trying to find Warren, I feel like we learned that the administration building is where we need to go. There's also a clue over at the observatory. Actually, not the worst idea in the world either. We could try to go get that clue and get an experience point from it. Zoey has a bit of a wild idea, but I'm not quite sure how I'm going to work this out, but we're going to try it. This is how she do. She's called back to the observatory. Although, yeah, those clues don't do anything for me, so sorry. Now I'm talking out loud. Now I'm trying to figure out what it is that we need to do to try to, work out the best possible solution here. The experiment is running rampant in the alchemy labs. It seems unlikely we're going to be able to fight it. It's not impossible, but it seems difficult. There's an experience point at the observatory. There's something there that if she discovers it, and she knows this, she'll be able to have a bit more of a vision into what she needs to do. She could try to lead the students to safety out of the dormitories, or she could go look for Professor Warren Rice. Zoey is drawn by that knowledge of there are secrets beyond what she normally thinks she knew, and perhaps those clues will help her. It's a little crazy, but we're going to try it. So her first action is going to be to taunt, not literally, but she's going to essentially wave and shout at the whippoorwill and engage it. So it's on her now. She's going to move twice. Once, twice, to the observatory. Both times that she moves, the whippoorwill screeches at her in a way that is truly horrifying. So we're taking 2 attacks of opportunity because we're not fighting it. 2 horror, because it deals a horror. And now we've ended on the observatory. In the enemy phase, hunter enemies hunt, and the whippoorwill's engaged with us, so it gives us another horror. Zoe's starting to feel her mind cracking because of this bird, but she also knows that she can't let it out of her sight. It's somehow through it, she's hearing what she needs to do. It's not bad either, frankly. Keep those if we can. Oh boy. Okay, and we move back into the Mythos phase during the upkeep. Oh yeah, of course, right. Okay, so this might be really bad. So we place a doom on the agenda, and it advances Agenda 1A to Agenda 1B. Something stirs. The university is dead silent, except for the student union, where there was a security guard that fought and, injured George, the police officer, and the alchemy labs, where there's some sort of huge beast. The shadows coil about your feet as you walk, and you swear there's something following you with each step you take. It's a bird. It's screeching quite loudly. Is it just your imagination, or is there really someone or something stalking you? Each investigator with 5 or more cards, 10 or more cards. Okay, so we have to just check how many cards we have in our discard pile. 12. So that's definitely 10 or more. Ew. We need to take 2 horror. If it's the first scenario, advance to 2A. Okay, so we need to take 2 horror. That sucks. I'm putting 1 on Jazz, and I'm taking 1 on me. Ugh. Now it's starting to get dicey. This is where Zoey thrives. She's getting desperate. Oh, that was stupid. I'm going to leave this in, but I just want to point out that that moment that you just saw is me realizing a pretty severe misplay. Something that's super unnecessary. I took an action that was essentially wasted that did nothing for me. Now we'll... I didn't take a resource from becoming engaged with the whippoorwill. Did I? I don't think I did, but I'm gonna say that I did, just in case. And I just want to leave this in because I think for any new players, it's important to note that sometimes you make a mistake, and sometimes it's game-breaking, and sometimes it isn't. I made the scenario harder for myself. I'm not going to make it easier for myself by going back, and I'm not going to retcon what I did. Zoey wanted that whippoorwill to follow her, and it truly cracked the edges of her mind. Agenda 2A, the dead of night. Professor Rice's disappearance isn't the only thing amiss at the university. Really? You don't say. You're unsure exactly what's going on, but you're starting to believe Armitage was right in asking for your help. Each investigator's max hand size is reduced by 3 when checking hand size during the upkeep phase. So I think it's at the end. Yeah, so you draw a card and gain a resource, and then you discard down to 8, but now it's down to 5, so we'd have to burn some of these cards if we can. We advance the agenda to 2A, but we need to draw an encounter card. It's Beyond the Veil. If there's no copy, but it surges, so in fact that something at the observatory, perhaps it's the fact that there's astronomical charts, but something is nagging Zoey. Something is telling her that there is a secret here, and it's starting to peel back a little bit more. Light of a Forgamon. Looking up into the sky, something is venturing down towards her. It's a light. Is it from her god? Attach it to the current agenda or the current act. Treat all damage as direct and all horror as direct. So, the Light of a Forgamon, which I'm going to attach to the agenda. I don't think I'll be able to finish this in 3 turns or less. Basically, for the next 3 turns, if we take any damage or any horror, so that would be from things like Beyond the Veil or this Whippoorwill or any other things, it's direct, which means it has to be assigned to us rather than, say, our, body armor or Jazz Mulligan or whatever. In other words, if we take more horror, we're in danger of going insane. If we take more damage, we're in danger of dying or being defeated. This scenario, we don't actually die, but anyway. The Light of a Forgamon sucks. First action. With the Whippoorwill still shrieking in her ears and this light descending from above, which Zoey is starting to realize might not quite be the heavenly trio of angels that she was expecting. She does notice something here in the observatory. One of the professors has been murdered in the observatory. His body is slumped over a desk over an astronomy, over a star chart. So Zoe's going to spend a moment sort of re-examining this crime scene and seeing what she can discover here. The professor was killed by a human. There are what appear to be blade wounds in his back. So Zoey is kind of examining it to see what she can learn, and in removing the body from the star chart, she gasps. The arrangement of the constellations. In it, for the briefest of moments, she sees the face of her god, and it is smiling at her. Play only as your first action. Discover a clue. 2 clues if there's an enemy. This is why it was silly. I didn't need to bring the Whippoorwill with me to do this, but I did, and that's just where we're at. It doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity. Hooray! So I get the clue off this location, which will give me a victory point later. But it's free. It's testless. Second action. We've got to get this Whippoorwill, man. It's still with us, so we can just chop it up. I have -1 to my fight, but +1 from the machete, so I'm a 4 fight against 2. And do I want to do anything here to do that? No, I don't. I just want to chop it. So we're chopping 4v2. Big swing and a miss. Swing and a miss. Zoey is essentially waving her chopping blade around at this Whippoorwill that's fluttering above her head. The screeching has become even louder ever since it's discovered the murder here at the observatory. Last action, chop, 4v2. Darn it. That's so bad. Okay, well, so we missed that one as well. And once again, with a loud screech in the enemy phase, it's going to deal us a horror, which I think it would be safe to say we should try to dodge. Play when an enemy attacks an investigator. Cancel. So we're just going to straight up cancel its attack. It's still here with us, which is horrible, but at least it's not the worst. In the upkeep phase, we draw Reckless Assault. That could be fun on the Whippoorwill. Just charging at it, screaming profanities. Mythos. We place a doom on this new agenda, shuffle the encounter deck, and we're going to draw our encounter card, which is another Baleful Welcome. Choose 2 of the following actions. We're going to choose Investigate and Evade. Something about the face that she saw in that star chart, those constellations, has filled Zoey with a sense of dread. She believes that it is her god. But now she's starting to have doubts. This unshakable beacon of faith is starting to doubt. I'll leave the Baleful Welcome here as a reminder. I can't evade or investigate, but I can do all sorts of other stuff. So specifically, we can fight. Now, I don't want to take any attacks of opportunity, so as the investigation phase begins, Zoey is just going to chop, 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 chop. I'm going to keep the Reckless Assault for a creature that's a bit scarier, just in case. We're going to chop. We're a 4v2. Excellent. Now that she's been she's stumbling away from the vision of this crime scene in front of her. The whippoorwill lands on a branch right in front of her face and croaks out a caw. She reaches out and pierces it with the tip of her machete, and it just watches her as the life drains from its body. It knows. Discard. Ah, okay, good. So, phew. All right, that's a good thing. We can still move, though, so we should try to... We're trying to do something. We're trying to either get the students out or find Warren, so I think we're going to try to find Warren, and we'll see how it goes. Second action, move back to the quad, and race through the quad straight to the administration building. Around the aged administration building, creepers of ivy climb from the ground in an effort to claim it. The old hall stands alone in an isolated section of the campus, apart from the day-to-day bustle of students. Again, it's not that Zoey doesn't care about the lives of the students here at Miskatonic, it's just that she's focused on learning what she could from the observatory, and now she is single-mindedly pursuing what she came here to do. How is she going to face Henry Armitage, her old mentor, if she hasn't even bothered to look for Warren Rice? It's a 4-shroud location with one clue. After it's revealed, put the faculty offices into play. This is The Night is Still Young. At the end of your turn, if you're in the administration building, discard the top card of your deck. Sucks. But it is what it is. The door leading into the faculty offices is locked. You can't move in there unless you have Jazz. Which we do. You come to a locked door at the top of the stairs leading to the 3rd floor of the administration building. Through its frosted window, you glimpse a shadow darting across the hall. Uh-oh! However, I moved twice, so it's the end of my turn, which means if you're in the administration building, discard the top card of your deck. That sucks. It's on the hunt. I mean, not that I want on the hunt right now, but again, in the enemy phase, the experiment is still smashing up the building, so that's okay. And we're going to draw a card. Ah, I knew it. This is Zoey's signature weakness. Each investigator has a signature asset, something that is specific to them, which helps them do what they like to do best, generally, and a signature weakness, something that is, again, specific to them. Zoey's is a task. It's called Smite the Wicked. Look at that art, though. Wow, 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 wow. Discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until an enemy is discarded. Attach Smite the Wicked to that enemy and spawn it at the location farthest from you. When the game ends, if it's in play, you suffer a mental trauma. In other words, as Zoey takes Jazz up the stairs towards the 3rd floor of the administration building, where she knows the faculty offices are, she knows that this is where they're going to find Professor Warren Rice. And yet, all of a sudden, a voice, loud, clear, purposeful, and hard, enters her mind. Zoey, smite the wicked. You must destroy the creatures of darkness. So we're going to discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until we discard an enemy. Then we're going to spawn at the location farthest. 1, 2, 3. Oh, damn it. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. The furthest from me is either the dormitories or the alchemy labs. Oh, that sucks. Ugh. Okay, looks like we're maybe going to go get the students after all. Maybe. Discarding cards until we hit an enemy. I feel like there's probably still enemies left. There it is. Oh no. This is a vassal of the lurker. Hunter, that's good. Okay, so it's actually going to hunt towards us, so thankfully we get to smite the wicked as it comes towards us. Oh, so bad. Okay. This is where things start to get a little dicey. I think I said that earlier, but I didn't mean it then. Now I do. Zoey is overwhelmed by this voice, drops her blade to the floor, and Jazz looks at her. Are you okay, miss? She knows that she must return to the dormitories, to the student union. This creature is there. And not only is it potentially going to hurt students, but Zoey's not even thinking about that. She's thinking, this thing must be destroyed. It is unnatural. This is my duty. I really don't want to take a mental... Do I want to take a mental trauma? This is an interesting question. And it's worth a victory point, though, so we should try to get it. So in Upkeep, I drew the Smite the Wicked, which sucks. We go to 2 out of 3 Doom on this new agenda, newish agenda, and we draw our encounter card. Something good. Never! Either draw the top 2 cards of the encounter deck, or place a Doom on the current agenda. Resurgent Evils is a replacement for Ancient Evils. Ancient Evils, which we saw in our Doomed campaign with Agnes Baker. Kind of screwed her at least once. Instead of just place a Doom, there's nothing you can do about it, this gives you a choice. It's either that, or draw the top 2 cards of the encounter deck. That is probably worse. And this gets rid of Light of Forgamon. So, as she's overcome by the voice that tells her to smite the wicked, destroy the creatures of darkness. So he's never really noticed it before, but somehow that voice is always accompanied by a feeling which she thought was the feeling of judgment. Her god is a god of judgment. But somehow it's always also accompanied by a feeling of encroaching disaster. So we're going to advance the agenda. Which discards Light of a Forgamon, hooray! And I had to discard down to 5, sorry. I forgot. My max hand size was reduced, so I'll discard this emergency cash. A cry of fear echoes through the campus, and several students flee from the eastern side of the university where the science building can be found. Could this commotion be linked to Professor Rice's disappearance? If the experiment is in play, move it a location towards the dormitories. If it's not in play, spawn it in the science building. It is, so it's going to move towards the dormitories. Agenda 3A, the Beast Unleashed. Some kind of wild creature is on the loose. Whatever it is, it appears to be headed towards the university dormitories. When this agenda would advance by reaching its Doom threshold, instead, remove all Doom, move the experimental location towards the dormitories. If it enters the dormitories, advance. So, the Beast has finished smashing up the alchemy labs, and it knows where the most humans can be found. The youngest, tastiest flesh. The student dormitories. So it's started its advance. It's come out of the alchemy labs, and it's now breaking through the science building. Soon it'll be in the quad. Soon it'll head towards the student union. And then it will be into the dormitories. And bad things will happen. So that was the Mythos phase. At least we now know what we got to do, right? The experiment, this horrible beast thing, is headed towards the dormitories. If it gets there, bad stuff happens. Now we can just get out. We managed to learn something. But of course Zoey has been told to smite the wicked, so instead I think she needs to kill it. Of course. Her first action will be to move back towards the quad. Her second action... Oh, this is interesting. Her second action... I think this makes more thematic sense. Unless Light of a Forgamon comes out, which would really suck. It's fine. I can't die here. Not now. Not yet. As Zoey runs back towards the quad, bent on destroying this creature that she was told to defeat, Jazz is running along behind her, shouting about something about how weren't they headed up there towards the faculty offices? And like, hey miss, like that's where the beast is. Don't go that way. Zoey spends some time thinking about all of the things in her life, all of the people that she's ever cared for, and decided that she needs to do her best to try to save them. Zoe isn't really close with her family. She isn't really close with any friends per se, but Henry has assigned her a task, and while she can't accomplish that one, she can do what her god commands, and she can smite the wicked. She has something worth fighting for. And she has an action left. She doesn't want to draw. She's going to take a resource, I guess. We could, if we head one more space into the student union, then we're going to get the vassal on us. That's not the worst either, actually. Yeah, let's do it. We'll be closer. Last action, she's going to head back into the student union. In the enemy phase, I don't know what this thing is, but it's the thing that was called out to her as the creature of darkness. It hunts into her location. At the end of the enemy phase, okay, so it hunts into her location and it attacks her. It does a damage and a horror, which, you know, the horror goes on something worth fighting for, because she knows she needs to fight to destroy this creature, and she'll take the hit from it as its tentacles reach out and wrap around her arms. What is this thing? I don't know. And what is the lurker? Zoe doesn't know what to make of all this. And at the end of the enemy phase, discard a card from the top of the deck. It's evidence. Okay. In the upkeep phase, we ready everything that needs to be readied. And we sure hope that nothing really bad happens as we draw. Oh, I advanced the agenda, so there's nothing there. Yeah, we're good. Okay. We draw a card. It's another Desperate Search. That's going to be really useful. Yeah. Okay. And we move back to the Mythos phase. We place a Doom on our 2 Doom threshold. And we draw an encounter card. It's a Thrall. Oh no. Oh, it spawns at the location with the most clues. The only location with any clues right now is the administration building. So a malevolence has overtaken their minds, turning them into soulless puppets. Just like the enthralled security guard that confronted Zoe and George here at the student building, the shadow that had darted across the hall near those faculty offices is in fact another professor who has been overtaken by, again, some sort of change that has come over them, some sort of infection. It says a malevolence has overtaken their minds, turning them into soulless puppets, but these thralls also appear to be changing physically. Could they be related to the experiment from the alchemy labs? Dunno. Thankfully, that's that. So, let's smite the wicked. Yay. Does it have versus retaliate? Nope. So we're just gonna fight. We're a 5 fight against 3. So we're just gonna attack it a whole bunch and hope to kill it. Zoe sees that Jazz is, horrified by the creature in front of her, and she just brushes the hair out of her face and marches towards it, ready to hack away at its limbs before trying to drive the blade into what appears to be a mouth. 5d3. Fantastic. That's 2 damage. That goes on the vassal of the lurker. Second action. We're going to chop it again. Do I need to throw in the reckless assault? May as well. Commit only to a skill test only if you have 3 or fewer remaining sanity. So as Zoe hacks away at the limbs of this creature, it begins to squeal in fear or pain. She doesn't care. She knows that this is an unnatural sight and she needs to destroy it by any means necessary. So she's fighting at a 5 with the machete and a 9 and 10. She continues to hack away at the beast. Her eyes are wild with a fire that she hasn't experienced since the last time she was called upon to smite the wicked. And the creature has been cut into 1,000 pieces, which eventually stop wriggling and they lie on the floor. The abomination is dead. And we get a victory point. And smite the wicked has been done. The voice in her mind, the voice of her god, has been appeased. Now again, who is that? We don't know. For her last action, she knows the beast is coming towards her, and towards the dormitories more specifically, so she's going to enter into the dormitories. Because she's allowed to, because Jazz unlocks the door for her. 3 clues, 1 victory point. If the investigators in the dormitories spend 3 clues as a group, resolution 2, as you explore these old, well-kept buildings, you find yourself wondering whether the beds are comfortable. So, in other words, she's running in here and screaming at students to try to get out. It's only 1 shroud, and we already have 1 clue. So, in fact, we can clear all of these clues, hopefully, and then try to spend them to advance before the beast comes for us. That's the hope. In the enemy phase, none of these enemies hunt, so to speak. They're not hunting for Zoey. Upkeep, we draw Vicious Blow. That would have been okay before. Oh, I didn't take a resource from being engaged with the Lurker, which I will. It doesn't make a difference now, but I'm trying to remind myself to do it more in the future. That's one of those things. I will retcon it because it doesn't really make a difference. And it is something that I want to teach myself to be on the lookout for. In the Mythos phase, we go to 2 out of 2 Doom. When it would advance, instead remove all Doom and move the experiment 1 location towards the quad. Towards the dormitories. So it's now in the quad. This rampaging beast is drawing ever closer. And Zoey gotta go fast. Draw an encounter card. It's Visions of Future Past. Uh-oh. For each point you fail by, discard the top card of your deck. Things are looking pretty low. And if we run out of cards, we take 10 damage. I can only take 8. Jazz can take 2. We'll still be defeated. So I need to pass this as best I can. Zoey's going to throw in everything she has to try to overcome the visions that are threatening to blur her vision. And I mean, these are where the Visions of Future Past came to her as well in the dormitories. It's clearly linked to this location for some reason, and she's going to try to... Oh no, we're in the dormitories now, but they're getting stronger. So she's going to just focus on being as strong as she possibly can. She has 6 will versus the 5 that's required here. -1, perfect. Okay, she just manages to shake it off and watches as Jazz gives her like a, "Are you okay, lady?" kind of look. She moves forward. We're definitely going to get 2 clues off this location and then advance and get the students out. Ideally, we'll also try to get the last clue so that we can get another victory point, but we'll see. So, this is a pretty simple end of this scenario. Zoey has made her way into the dormitories, now unlocked by Jazz Mulligan, the head janitor, and she is literally just running around screaming at students to get out. Don't even bother keeping anything. It's only 1 shroud, and we need to pick up some clues, but I only have 2 intellect, so I'm going to throw in on my... this is a desperate search. She's literally just running around screaming, so she's a 6v1. That's good enough for me. That's a clue. Whoops. And 1 more. Again, she's still screaming at students to try to get out before something happens to them. We're not quite sure if they're afraid of the sounds they hear coming from the science building or the quad, or more afraid of the woman with the chopping blade covered in blood that are screaming at them to get out. Again, we're a 6v1 here. Elder Sign. +1. Doesn't really matter. We got it. Okay. We have our 3 clues. And we're back. I had to check timing. If it doesn't cost an action to do something in Arkham Horror, the LCG, the card game, you can take the action during any player window. There's a lot of player windows between the various phases and during the various phases of the game, but it's very specific, so I had to consult the timing chart to see when I'll be able to do them. However, our last action is going to be... she's now screamed at enough students that they're going to get out. But our last action is going to see if we can get this last clue. And I mean, maybe we'll just try again next turn anyway, before spending the clues to advance. Before we die. I'm a 2 intellect versus 1 shroud. No, okay, so we failed that. So we could spend the clues in advance, but instead, we'll move to the enemy phase, and we'll do upkeep, so we'll draw a card. It's the other Vicious Blow. Move back to the Mythos phase, where we place a Doom on the agenda, We're going to spend next turn trying to get the last bit of information out of the dormitories, see if Zoey can find out anything more about what could have happened here that's causing these visions, whether there were students involved in some sort of cult or whether she dreamed that whole thing. We'll have to see. It's Resurgent Evils, a classic. Okay. Sucks. I should have known. So we'll place the doom, which causes the agenda to advance. Instead of advancing, the experiment is now right on top of us. It's at the student union. So at the end of this investigator phase, if Zoey hasn't found what she thinks she's looking for, we're just going to get out. First action, investigate. Big fail. Big fail. She basically falls over one of the door frames looking for something. There's students all around her running out of the building as a beast roars nearby, smashing up the front doors. Zoey isn't quite ready to leave yet. If we're being honest, Zoey would probably be ready to try to take on this beast on her own, but she doesn't really know if she'd be able to stand up to the horror that the beast might cause. Let's go again. We're 2v1. +1, clue, off the location. Excellent. That's exactly what I wanted. And then free trigger. If investigators in the dormitory spend 3 clues as a group, advance to R2. Let's do it. Resolution 2. Hey, I'm pleased. You pull each of the dormitory's fire alarms and usher the students out of the building's north exit. Again, this desperate search, in fact, is her running around, slamming fire alarms and just screaming at the top of her lungs, waving her blade around and trying to direct people out of there. Many of the students are confused and exhausted, but you believe an attempt to explain the situation will do more harm than good. Again, Zoey actually does try to explain the situation, but the looks of fear that she's getting are telling her maybe to not bother. Minutes later, a terrible screech echoes across the campus, piercing and shrill. You tell the students to wait and head back to the dormitories to investigate. Oddly, you find no trace of the strange creature. Uh-oh. A prospect that worries you more than it relieves you. You hurry to the faculty offices to find Professor Rice, but there's no sign of him anywhere. Well, Zoey knew that was going to happen. She specifically gave up looking for Professor Warren Rice when she was overwhelmed by her destiny to smite the wicked. Record that Professor Warren Rice was kidnapped. The students were rescued. Each investigator earns Victory X, and then we're going to go to the House Always Wins. Victory X is the cards in the victory display. 1 for the dormitories, 1 for the observatory, and 1 for the vassal of the lurker. Well, I'm going to say not too bad, frankly, all things considered. This marks the end of our first scenario of Zoey Samaras in Return to the Dunwich Legacy, and specifically her victory at what cost in Return to Extracurricular Activities. I hope everybody enjoyed. Don't forget, if you have any thoughts, feelings, comments, concerns, or if you just want to school me on my play, you can put them in the comments down below. This marks a pretty auspicious beginning, I think. We managed to smite the wicked, and we managed to get a few experience points, which I will be spending before Zoey heads on over to the Clover Club Lounge, which she really doesn't want to, but now at least she feels up to the task. Thanks so much for watching. How do I want to end this? Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to catch you on the next Doomed.